Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Renoy from OC Imaging, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a long overdue review of the Lumix G85. Every camera has pros and cons. This camera in particular has a lot of pros. There are cons, and a few of them are well known, and these can be overlooked if you have the right frame of mind. But here's my experience, what I love about this camera and what I dislike about this camera. Starting off with the positives, first and foremost, for video image quality, you are always likely to get pretty good video quality out of a Micro Four Thirds camera. But for photos, I quickly began to realize that if this is paired with the right lens, and I paired this with the 50mm Canon lens and the Viltrox Speed Booster, I was able to get some pretty awesome images. Pretty high quality images as well from this little camera right here. Micro Four Thirds cameras get a lot of bashing for photo quality or their lack of photo quality and the fact that it's 16 megapixels. But from what I've seen, megapixel count really doesn't matter. Like I said, once it's paired with a really awesome lens and you have proper lighting, any camera can give you amazing photo quality. Now for battery life, this battery life is pretty amazing. I can definitely not complain about the battery life on this camera. I have gone through a day where I've been shooting videos and shooting photos, and I went through with the original battery that I got. Over time this did deteriorate, of course, but the battery life is pretty good. However, when I started using the Nikon D7000, which I will also be doing a review on, I realized that battery life on this does not even come close to the Nikon D7000. But that's a known fact that DSLR batteries have always been better than mirrorless camera bodies. If anyone that's watching uses a Micro Four Thirds camera, let me know in the comments below what your experience has been like. Now, another advantage of this camera is the fact that Micro Four Thirds in general is the fact that you can adapt so many different lens mount to this particular camera. I have a Nikon lens mount and I also have a Canon EF lens mount adapter as well. And I've used lenses from both these camera brands and they have worked remarkably on this. Like I said, some of the best photos that I got were from the Canon 50mm lens adapted to this camera. Now, while I didn't test this a lot, I did have a situation where I was vlogging once and it was actually raining, and the fact that I was using the Lumix G85 paired with the 12 to 60mm kit lens that comes with it, both are weather sealed, and I had no worries about, my camera being damaged or anything like that. With that in mind though, I didn't take advantage of it. I didn't overdo it. It was just drizzling, so I just went ahead and recorded my vlog. Now I do have experience with Nikon cameras, Canon cameras, and of course the Lumix camera. And of course I had the Yi M1 mirrorless camera as well. And I must say, out of all the three that I've used so far, the Lumix by far has the simpler menu setup. You can go in there not knowing a lot about a camera and understand exactly what each function does. So it's pretty simple to navigate the menu systems, and I definitely got to give Lumix props for that. One of my absolute favorite features on this particular camera is when you flip this switch from autofocus to manual focus, it automatically brings up focus peaking. And if you don't know what focus peaking is, it assists you in catching your focus when you're doing manual focus. So what will happen is that for whatever is in focus, it's going to be highlighted in whatever color you actually select, because in the menu options there are different colors that you can select. So the fact that knowing that, seeing that green color or that red color over the person's eye, you know that that person is going to be in focus. And with where video is concerned, and because of one of the disadvantages of this mirrorless Panasonic mirrorless camera or Lumix mirrorless camera, manual focusing is an absolute must in some cases, and the focus peaking absolutely helps that situation. Another feature that I love about this camera is the fact that you can hit that record button and leave it and come back and it's still recording. You can leave it for end. As long as there's battery life and there's memory card space, you're gonna be there recording. I've even left this out in the sun and it kept recording. It did not overheat or anything like that. The only time that the camera actually got hot was recently when I did a video, did some shots in 4K. The camera did get a little bit hot, but it didn't indicate that it was overheating or anything like that. Now, the image stabilization is something that I absolutely adore about this camera. But the thing is, you don't see or you don't realize how much you enjoy the image stabilization until you start shooting with another camera that does not have image stabilization. I kid you not, I have shot some photos at 1/60 and it did not have any blur or any odd movements or anything in the photo. If I try that with a Nikon D7000 with a lens that doesn't have image stabilization built in, it's not going to end well. So the image stabilization in this camera, both for photo taking and for video as well, is absolutely wonderful. I have shot a lot of handheld videos and they came out really good. And for vlogging, the image stabilization really does work well. I've only had a few instances where I noticed that jello in the end of the image or at the corner of the image. Aside from that, the image stabilization on this camera is immaculate.
Now, one of my absolute favorite things about this camera, and possibly all other Lumix cameras, because I'm sure they all use the same app, well, the app, like, it is amazing. I absolutely enjoy using it. You should be seeing it right now because I'm doing a screen record from my phone, and you should see all my settings up here and settings down here as well, and to whichever side it's actually on, you'll be seeing that I have access to my white balance, my aperture, my ISO. Wait, hold up. Oh, it's showing. So my white balance, my ISO, my aperture, my shutter speed, it's all there. I have full control. I can do whether it be photos, videos. It is an amazing app, especially if you do videos like I'm doing, where you do videos of yourself at home for YouTube, or you do photos of yourself. So I absolutely have to give a shout out to Lumix for their app. The image app, the Panasonic image app, is absolutely amazing and by far one of the best features on this Lumix G85.
Now, another positive of this camera, which I noticed immediately after getting it, is that where burst mode is concerned, it is a beast. I was coming from the Nikon D5300, and the burst mode on that, well, in all honesty, I never even used it because it didn't do that well for me. But the day that I got this particular camera and went out with it, but the day I went out with this camera and I hit that shutter button after putting the camera in burst mode, I just listen to this. I had the same face the whole time. It was just amazing. I took so many photos, just one click of the shutter, and this is something that I definitely appreciate with this camera. And over time I realized that this was something with mirrorless cameras, because again, I'm fairly new to this, so I wasn't aware that there's a difference, a huge difference where it concerns burst ratio or burst mode in mirrorless cameras and DSLR cameras. But yeah, this particular camera, is a beast when it comes to burst mode. Another positive, which I knew I would have appreciated before I even got the camera, was this, or is this, fully articulated screen. Now, I had the Nikon D5300, which also had a fully articulated screen. So this was a factor when I was purchasing the Lumix G85. So when I'm vlogging, I'm able to see myself. When I'm creating my YouTube videos, I'm able to see myself and, you know, my composition and everything like that. So this is definitely another great feature of the Lumix G85.
Now, before we get into the negatives, guys, just a quick reminder to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.
Now, let's move on to the negatives. I only have a few listed, and the main one for me is the autofocus. Initially, it wasn't that big of a deal because with the Nikon D5300 that I had and some lenses that I inherited from my aunt, those were manual lenses. So I was already doing a lot of manual focus, and I began to like manual focus. So it wasn't that big of a deal when I found out that the autofocus wasn't the best. I still purchased the Lumix knowing that. But over time, getting more photography work to do, I realized how much of a disadvantage this was. Like, I had a photo shoot with a toddler. Now, if you've ever had a photo shoot with a toddler, you know that they do not stay still. And I had to be moving, I had to be doing manual focus, and it was very difficult to get the shots that I wanted. I did get some shots, but they were not as tack sharp in focus as I wanted them to be. So that was kind of one of the push towards getting a different camera to focus on photography. So this, for right now, is my main video camera. This is my first time using the D7000 as a video camera. I'm actually using it with my vintage lens, which is a manual focus lens, but we'll get more into that when I do a review of this particular camera. To have reliable autofocus is a definite must for me with the experiences that I've had on my more recent photo shoots. So that's why I got the Nikon D7000, and that's why I'm actually building up towards another camera, which I know for a fact is an autofocus beast. But yeah, autofocus for the Lumix line of cameras, or Micro Four Thirds cameras in general, though I have heard that Olympus autofocus is much better. But for the Lumix G85 in particular, the autofocus is not dependable, so that definitely is a disadvantage. Another disadvantage is the low light performance. I've used this camera in ISO 6400 before sunset, and it was horrible. There's an option that you can set how far up the ISO actually goes. I don't want to pass 800 ISO, and 800 ISO is actually more than I want to go. I try to keep this at 200 ISO as much as possible, because the moment you start going a little high on ISO, you start to get a lot of noise in your photo or your footage, and without proper lighting, it's not gonna be good at all. So low light performance on this camera is not the best, which was also another thing that I knew, but because I have my lighting set up and everything for videos, it wasn't an issue. But it really is a disadvantage or a negative on the part of the Lumix G85. Another negative for me, and this is actually the final one, my list is just 3. Other persons would probably have more, but for my time with this camera, these have been my main issues. And this one is the fact that Cinelite D and Cinelite V, which are cinema or cinema-like profiles that you can use when you're making videos or when you're recording videos, you only have those to use when you're using manual movie mode. If you're using the regular manual mode, you can't. So there are times when you're switching between manual video mode and manual photo mode, and it switches profile because it doesn't have that Cinelite D profile or V profile. Or if you're using aperture priority mode to record video, you don't have access to Cinelite D or Cinelite V. And for me, that's definitely something that I didn't appreciate. It's me nitpicking, but it was a big enough issue for me.
So those are my pros and cons of the Lumix G85. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is a bad camera. In fact, I absolutely recommend this camera, especially if you're new to photography or videography, more so videography. As you can see, the quality that you get from this camera is absolutely amazing. And paired with the right lens, it's a wonderful starter camera. With that being said, I'm actually selling my Lumix G85, so if you're interested, just hit me up. However, if I don't get this camera sold, I will keep it as my B camera for videos. So, this is Ronoy from OC Imaging once again, just reminding you all to live, love, and laugh. Peace out. I'm gonna, because of the focal length, I can't block it. So, I'm gonna just go that way.